Well, good morning, everybody. A lot of the story we're going to be kind of explaining here in this forecast has to do with the jet stream level winds, as it normally does. But what I want you to see right now is that the flow is rather bunched up. We have a lot more meridional, meaning north-south flow, and then we do have west-to-east flow, which is typical of the westerlies. They tend to flow just like this. And the biggest feature right now has been the repeated occurrence of this omega block. And anytime there's a block, remember, it's more north-south than west-east flow, which means the pattern slows down. And a lot of kind of the bunched up behavior of the jet stream in the western United States, in the Gulf of Alaska, over the Aleutian Islands, this is all primarily due to what's happening downwind. It's just stalled here. It's pushed north-south and not moving. Well, the pattern is beginning to show signs of opening up. And one of the most important things about this forecast is to see this move. What happens, unfortunately, is that we start to return troughs to the west, including cold air for California, but the midsection of the country begins a major warm-up ahead of this ridge that's going to be just opening up into the midsection of the United States. But it is May, and therefore, whenever we see this kind of behavior, we have to start watching for the advection of moisture out of the Gulf, how far into the west it makes it to set us up with storms. We're going to talk about that in a second. For though I want to show you this first. This was Sunday. And this is the deep low that went spinning here over the eastern Great Lakes. This is the one that delivered the snow on the backside in parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, especially the UP. We had convective squalls inside of this, which meant we had cold air, but there was still convective behavior in the atmosphere. Again, how cold it got aloft, and therefore you have some small, soft, spongy hail or graupel, some brief but very intense showers, and like 40-mile-an-hour winds at times in here. The leading wave, which was this one right here, so you can kind of see there's two of them. There's the deeper wave here, and then there's the short wave that was out ahead of it. That's the one that produced the severe weather that came through North Carolina. Also produced, you probably saw the tornado report here in Virginia. And behind it, some clear, cold air, though. Now, a couple of other neat things to see in this animation. Notice we don't see the snow underneath the small cumulus field that's over the Red River of the North. Most of that snow is gone. I'll show you the map in a moment. But out west, there's still an extensive amount of snowpack here in the western United States, some places between 200 and 400% of normal. And the snow that's been melting out of the upper Colorado Basin, well, they've opened the Grand Canyon Dam. The Grand Canyon, is scheduled to have water flowing through it. We're trying to bring up the water levels in the Grand Canyon ahead of the rest of the melt here. So very interesting setup. This system over the weekend was the primary precipitation producer. You look back over the last 72 hours, the ridge in the west, hot and dry. Everything else was really associated with that deep low curling up over the Great Lakes in the short wave that snuck around the backside of this. Now, parts of North Carolina have had a very wet April. In fact, there's one climate reporting district down here in the south central part of North Carolina that had its fourth wettest on record. But in the mid-Atlantic, so Virginia, Maryland, parts of Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, this is an area that needed this precipitation badly, given the drought situation that had developed there. And as I mentioned with that snowpack, we can still see how extensive it is across the west. But take a look here in the northern plains. We're done with this, okay? And right now, I don't see in the forecast models the risk of a May snowstorm here. If that changes, I will let you know. But we're still dealing with snow on the backside of this. All right, this current low. This is the one that's going through like Ontario and the UP and Michigan. Bigger picture things. This is what the last 30 days look like in terms of precipitation. And that system that rolled through last week brought the precipitation totals up in a narrow corridor out of Colorado into sections of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. We've been very wet in this area and wet in pockets in the northern plains and upper Midwest. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is, yes, we have an ongoing issue that moisture needs to return to the breadbasket of the United States right in through here. We need more of that. And we need it to get back into this part of the Cotton Belt. Where we don't want the precip, honestly, is out west. We don't want any more precip coming into California right now. And we need to get this set up so that the pattern gets away from that. But unfortunately, it's not. But before I explain that, I would like to tell you something about this pattern. You know that I like to show you the European weeklies a lot, right? Those 30-day outlooks from the European model. We want to know how well did the weeklies capture April. So what I want to do here is I'm going to go back to the beginning of April and show you the forecast. So you note that it was forecasting wetter in through this area, wetter from Texas here up into parts of the mid-Atlantic, bit drier forecast in this area, drier in California, wetter in the Pacific Northwest. Now, we don't use this for magnitude. We don't use this for exactness. We look at this purely for pattern. We just want to see if the model's being consistent with the meteorology going on. We want to see if the model's consistent with itself, all right? So this was the forecast for, the month of April for the most part, and this is what we got. And you have to say the model's doing a pretty good job. Now, April's over and we're into May, and I want to show you something important about May. I'm going to use a data set from Prism. I love this data set. It's from Oregon State. It's top-notch. What's nice about this is they've broken everything down into 30-year normals per month. So this would be March, and we're looking here at precipitation, total precipitation in the month of March. Now, what is important about May is where we have drought. I want to talk about what's going to happen in this area historically, climatologically, because from March into April, we typically start to see that moisture returning to a broader section here of the Mississippi and Missouri and the Arkansas and Red River Valley, so this whole area. As you go from April into May, watch right here, okay? May is typically, again, April, May. May is typically the most stormy month for this section of the plains, where we know that we are in drought. And we need to see May be May. We need to see the jet stream coming out of the southwest like this. If it does, that is the best indicator of returning storms to the plains of the United States. Doesn't mean every day. It just means if overall we see flow doing this more often than anything else, we tend to recover critically needed moisture in the plains of the United States. Now, just to show you from May into June, June is typically quite wet in this part of the Midwest. And then into July, we just see a lot of thunderstorm activity while the West is very, very dry and typically quite hot. Now, I know I focused a lot on the plains, but that's where we currently have drought. Now, take that, put it in the back of your mind as I go through this part of the forecast, which is going to walk us through May. Today, here on May 1st, much of this is due to wind. So, let's get that back to this arrow. Much of this is due to wind. Very strong winds on the backside, and this is a very late freeze warning, especially into northern Kansas. We are typically past our last frost freeze event at this time of year in Kansas, and here we go this morning with another freeze warning out for this particular part of the country. In the west, stronger winds down in the southwest. All of this is hydrologic outlook for the melting of snow, and the temperatures coming through the Great Basin up into the Pacific Northwest are going to be very hot, while California goes back over colder. This is what the winds look like today, so we can see just still spinning around that upper level low, very windy throughout a broad section here of the eastern part of the United States. We are watching another low curl up right here off of California as the next trough settles in. So let's go pick it up with the models and see where this goes. So you're going to watch two things. One low sneaking down here and a much, much broader low trying to leave, but it's still going to take a couple more days. So precipitation type and intensity from the NAM, let's play through the day on Monday. So look at all these little convective squalls in through here. So this could be rain, soft, spongy hail or graupel. On the backside, we're still looking at the risk of snow here. Here's where we're expecting some just colder rain showers. Now remember, as we go back and forth, this is through Monday night, getting into early Tuesday morning. There's the low curling up in California. This one will be putting down some snow in the Sierra Nevada, while this system finally pushes east and maybe gets some snow here in parts of the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia and West Virginia. So as we let this play out, this takes us all the way out to midday on Wednesday. Again, we saw the low curling up here, and we saw the low trying to exit the northeast. Now, while all this was happening, a larger ridge is trying to build in the midsection of the country. And as that ridge opens, remember in spring, ridges in the midsection of the country can help draw moisture north. In summer, it's a whole different story. But right now, this is what the latest update from the WPC shows. So this is precipitation through the next 7 days. Remember, this first contour line represents a ½ inch, and the one that kind of opens up into this shade of color represents 1.5 inches. So we are wet west. Better chances for storms begin to arrive in the plains, and we're going to watch the system exit north and east. Okay, the pattern tells us everything. As I play this forward, there is the deeper trough off California, while this one tries to exit through Wednesday and Thursday. What you notice is a larger ridge begins to open up here in Canada, while troughs flank the United States. But it's these little short waves that we're going to have to be watching. Those are the subtle features that can set things up to produce some strong storms. This is actually the second one on Saturday night coming through this part of the plains. We then see that the atmosphere wants to lose, at least in the models, it wants to lose its highly amplified meridional north-south flow. And we just keep ejecting these little waves that come out here into the plains. That's what happens typically in May. But we can make the argument that the west is going to see above average precipitation because of that trough right there. Okay, let's go see it in the models real quick. This is starting off with the GFS left, European on the right. We've already watched through midday Wednesday. Now what you're going to notice is there's the trough of low pressure off the west coast. And what's going to happen is we're going to start to see possibly on, I have to keep an eye out here midweek. I'm going to pause it. How about Thursday night? There's the first little shortwave that could come out. Severe weather possible running down the line I've shown you right here. In fact, that's shown up in the SPC. A lot of scattered rain with some snow in the Sierra Nevada. And then we're going to watch multiple weak systems. I'm keeping an eye more on the European model here through the weekend. So again, this is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Can you see how the Gulf is opening up, transporting moisture? But there's less organized systems. These shortwaves don't produce big lows that spin through, but they produce subtle ways to lift the air and give us these showers and storms. So this will be going out there until next Monday, and we keep playing forward. So there is some decent agreement in the model, but as you saw just a moment ago, this is the overall precipitation pattern we're settling into. A lot of scattered events, okay? From here, I do want to show you the snowfall forecast. Let's blow that up here. So we see additional snow still falling here on the backside. There's the snow in the Appalachian Mountains. And then you notice, look at the snow adding up here in the west as we progress through this week and see the deeper trough arrive. So a little bit more snow in the Upper Colorado Basin and Rockies, more snow in the Sierra Nevada as well. Okay, next 10 days, probability of at least an inch. This is what we typically see in May. See that opening up there? This is much wetter than normal for May. Same for this here in the Pacific, or excuse me, in the Northeast. Most of this is from the system that's trying to leave today. But I think we're going to move ourselves into May being very stormy inside of this corridor. Okay, next, what about week 2? So this next forecast graphics here show us a very similar setup. You can see it in all three of the models opening that up for week 2. That's going to be the top thing I'm going to be watching this month, and I'm going to be watching out for the risk of frost. This is what we've got right now in terms of where we expect to have a frost in the next 7 days. We're watching one right now in this area, everything in gray here. Now remember, I actually set the threshold on the map you're looking at, not at 32, but at 35. Because if we can get down there, that's why I call this a frost potential map. If we can get down to 35, low-lying areas will hit a frost. So let's go have a look at what the actual forecasts are. This is for Monday morning, and as we play into Tuesday morning and Wednesday, this is the time frame. Remember, we were always watching the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd for this colder air to arrive. This is where I've got the potential for some of that patchy frost in this area. Now notice, Texas to the northwest, very mild. That's Thursday, getting into Friday, and by Saturday and Sunday, we're going to start to see the pattern open up. Let's show you now the high temperatures. Here's today's highs. Miserable day in this area, hot in this region. California's gone back over cold after such a hot weekend. That's Tuesday. Again, look where that ridge is. Going from Tuesday into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, getting into Saturday and Sunday. Now what's nice about this pattern by Sunday is it's opened, and so you don't see the extreme colors, which means the flow is closer to what we expect for normal. But over the next 7 days, I think it's interesting to note that the Central Valley of California will pick up fewer GDDs than Montana. We start to see these numbers really beginning to come up here as the ridge opens, but it'll be this section of the country that's the longest holdout on the colder weather. All right, let's get to the end of this. This has been a long morning minute here. Our 5-day sliding window of average temperatures shows what we've been talking about now for about 10 days. The pattern is expected to open to warmth in the midsection of the country. Trough off the west keeps it cooler there. The southeast is the last holdout for colder weather. But getting into May, we do expect this to really break away from what April gave us, and a lot of mild conditions are showing up. In tonight's in-depth report, I will be covering the newest data from the CPC, including their new drought outlook. We'll also talk about their 1-month outlook for the month of May and some of the caveats in this, but have a good look at it right now. To give you one last thing to think about, we are still very hot in the Iberian Peninsula in northern Africa. This is an ongoing heat wave. It's very dry here as well. It's also very warm in Kazakhstan and parts of Russia, while Ukraine is having a cool start to this month of May. I also want to show you the 10-day preset for South America. We're wetter if you're west of this line, and which includes a lot of our safrinha crop in Mato Grosso. Paraguay, getting down into Rio Grande do Sul, this area had been in drought, and now they're getting some heavy rains. This is not a major concern given how wet it was in this area in the month of April, but there's finally some moisture coming into Argentina, which is desperately needed, but way too late to save crops from this year. Okay, I'll stop there. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again tonight in the In-Depth Report. Thanks.